Woman at the Well. A story buried in the Gospel of John, yet it carries the kind of shock that tears down walls built for centuries. Imagine this. A respected Jewish rabbi sits at a dusty well at noon, and instead of silence, he speaks to a Samaritan woman, an outcast with a past so heavy that even her own people avoided her. This was not just small talk. This was a collision of enemies, a breaking of every cultural rule, and the birth of a promise called living water. Why would Jesus risk his reputation to speak with her? What truth was so powerful that it could change her life and echo across 2,000 years to change ours? In this video, we will uncover the hidden layers of this extraordinary moment. The centuries of hatred between Jews and Samaritans, the crushing shame of the woman at the well, and the radical hope that turned her from rejected to redeemed. This is more than history. It is a mirror. Because haven't we all gone back to empty wells, hoping they would finally satisfy us? A career, approval, relationships, success, yet always thirsty again. What if the secret of the Samaritan woman is the key to breaking that cycle? Stay with me, because together we will unlock why this forgotten conversation in John 4 still speaks to every heart that longs for freedom. Comment your thoughts. What well do you find yourself returning to again and again? And if you want to dive deeper into stories that heal and inspire, hit subscribe and like, so you never miss what comes next. The broken world, hatred between Jews and Samaritans. Hatred does not happen overnight. It builds brick by brick through centuries of wounds, betrayals, and pride. The woman at the well carried not just her own shame, but the burden of generations who had been taught that Jews and Samaritans were sworn enemies. To understand the fire burning between them, you have to travel back 1,000 years, when the kingdom of Israel split in two after the death of Solomon. One kingdom clung to Jerusalem, the temple, the purity of the covenant. The other, the northern kingdom, became vulnerable to invaders. When Assyria came in 722 BC, it scattered the people, forced foreigners into the land, and mixed cultures, bloodlines, and religions until a new identity emerged: the Samaritans. To the Jews of Jerusalem, this was betrayal. They believed their brothers had polluted the faith of Abraham with pagan gods, broken the covenant, and corrupted their lineage. To them, the Samaritans were not just different, they were unclean. To the Samaritans, however, they were the true survivors, the faithful remnant, holding on to the Torah and worshipping on their sacred Mount Gerizim, which they believed was more ancient and holy than Mount Zion itself. The divide grew sharper when they built a rival temple there, only for it to be destroyed in rage by Jewish soldiers under John Hyrcanus. Imagine the trauma of seeing your holiest place burned to the ground by those who claimed to be your brothers. The scar never healed. By the 1st century, this hatred was baked into daily life. To call someone a Samaritan was the worst insult a Jew could use. Rabbis taught that sharing a cup with a Samaritan was like eating pig's flesh, unthinkable, defiling, disgusting. Even geography showed the fracture. Travelers from Judea to Galilee would walk days out of their way just to avoid stepping foot on Samaritan soil. The hatred was not abstract. It was personal, lived out in sneers, avoidance, curses, and sometimes violence. This is the furnace Jesus walked into when he chose to pass directly through Samaria. He was not looking for shortcuts on a map. He was tearing down invisible walls. The choice itself was a declaration: the living water. He came to offer would not flow only for the so-called pure, but for all who were thirsty. Think of how this resonates with our modern world. We still build walls between races, nations, religions, even within families. We label, we divide, we carry centuries of pain. And yet the truth is clear. Hate is learned, but so is reconciliation. What would happen if we dared to walk straight through the places everyone else avoids? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Can centuries of bitterness ever really be healed? Or do some walls feel too high to climb? This is where the story sharpens. The hostility between Jew and Samaritan was massive, but Jesus was about to show that walls are not just external, they can live inside a single soul. And that leads us to her story, a woman defined by whispers, living under the blazing sun of shame. The outcast woman. Shame at noon. Picture this. The sun stands still at the highest point in the sky, burning the earth beneath it. No one in their right mind would fetch water at noon. The well was a place of laughter in the cool morning, where women gathered like today's coffee shops, trading news, building bonds, sharing burdens. But at noon, it was empty, except for her. The Samaritan woman walked there alone, clutching her jar, preferring blistering heat to blistering stares. She had been married 5 times. We are not told why. Perhaps death stole her husbands. Perhaps divorce discarded her again and again. In her culture, divorce required little more than a man's word, while a woman had almost no rights. Whatever the reason, the stigma was brutal. In a society where a woman's honor was her life, she had none left. And now, the man she lived with was not her husband at all. Her whole existence had become a whisper. Every step to the marketplace was shadowed by eyes that judged. Every conversation stopped when she approached. Every child was pulled away from her path. She had a name, but the village had reduced her to a label, the woman with too many husbands. She carried not just a jar, but the crushing weight of humiliation. This is where the Bible becomes more than history, because we know this feeling, don't we? Maybe not the stigma of 5 marriages, but the experience of being defined by failure, by reputation, by what others whisper behind our backs. Maybe it's the job you lost, the relationship that broke, the addiction you can't shake, the secret you're sure would ruin you if anyone knew. Shame isolates. It drives us to fetch water at noon, when no one else is around, just to avoid the sting of being seen. Her walk to the well that day was more than routine. It was survival. And yet, survival can feel like thirst that never ends. Every morning she woke with hope that maybe today would be different, and every night she lay down with the same emptiness. We can all relate. How many times do we run back to the same well, the approval of others, the comfort of money, the distraction of entertainment, only to find ourselves thirsty again? But here's the beauty. God chooses moments like these to show up. Jesus waited for her at Jacob's well, not by accident, but by divine appointment. He sat in her place of isolation, in the heat of her shame, and turned it into the setting of redemption. The message is piercing. You are not overlooked, you are not abandoned, and the very spot you avoid may become the very place you are found. And just as he shattered centuries of hostility by walking into Samaria, he was about to shatter the prison of her shame by speaking the words no one else would dare to say. The collision between her thirst and his living water was about to begin, and it would change everything. The breaking of barriers. Jesus speaks first. It should have been silence. A Jewish rabbi and a Samaritan woman alone at Jacob's well, with centuries of hatred between them. This was the moment where no words were supposed to pass. Yet Jesus does the unthinkable. He looks at her and says, "Will you give me a drink?" In that one sentence, every wall begins to crumble. Gender, culture, religion, all the rules snap in an instant. He is not afraid of her vessel, her label, her past. He chooses to cross the uncrossable. Imagine the shock. For her, the question is absurd. For him, it is intentional. He asks for water but offers a spring that never runs dry. The Samaritan woman reacts with sarcasm, almost defensive. You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? She throws back the barrier he just ignored, like saying, don't you know how this works? We don't belong in the same conversation. But Jesus does not retreat. Instead, he raises the stakes. If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. The phrase explodes with promise. In a dry land, living water means a running spring, fresh and unstoppable. But here it is more. It is forgiveness, acceptance, eternal life. He is shifting the entire conversation from survival to transformation. Think about how radical this is. She expected judgment, maybe insults, maybe silence. Instead, she hears a promise. Jesus is telling her, you think I'm the thirsty one, but it's you, and I hold what you've been longing for your entire life. How often do we live this same cycle, searching in jobs, relationships, money, pleasure, thinking they will fill us, only to return thirsty again? His words echo across centuries. Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I give will never thirst. This is not just religion. It is a revolution of the soul. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What well do you keep running back to, hoping it will finally satisfy you? The tension builds. She challenges him, clinging to tradition. Are you greater than our father Jacob? She defends her heritage, her faith, her dignity. But Jesus sidesteps the debate. He speaks truth that cuts deeper than argument. The water I give will become a spring inside, welling up to eternal life. No more shame-fueled trips at noon, no more endless thirst. What he offers is not escape from life, but the power to live it differently, with freedom. And then, the piercing turn. Jesus says, go, call your husband. He touches the wound she hides. It feels harsh, but it is grace. To heal, the truth must be exposed. She answers, I have no husband. A half-truth, a shield, but Jesus sees through it without condemnation. You are right. You have had 5 husbands, and the man you have now is not your husband. Imagine her heart stopping in that moment. This stranger names her entire past, yet there is no scorn in his tone. He simply tells the truth and stays. For the first time, someone knows everything and does not walk away. That is healing. That is living water. This is where we need to pause and learn. Too often, when people see our brokenness, they recoil. Society writes us off. Even friends sometimes vanish when the truth gets messy. But Jesus leans in. He shows us that confronting pain is not about shame, it's about freedom. The lesson is clear. Grace begins when truth is brought into the light. If you have ever hidden a part of your story because you fear rejection, know this. God already knows, and he chooses to stay. Truth in grace. Confrontation without condemnation. What happened next is nothing short of revolutionary. Exposed, raw, the Samaritan woman tries to change the subject. She pivots away from her shame into theology. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim the place to worship is Jerusalem. It's a defense mechanism we know well. Hide pain behind debates, cover wounds with arguments. But Jesus refuses to play by old rules. He lifts the conversation higher than centuries of conflict. A time is coming, and has now come, when true worshippers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. These words are dynamite. They dismantle the very heart of the Jew-Samaritan conflict. No mountain, no temple, no geography will decide who belongs. True worship is no longer tied to sacred places, but to transformed hearts. It is not about ritual, it is about relationship. Spirit and truth become the new temple, available anywhere, for anyone, at any time. This is freedom exploding in real time. Think about what this meant for her. She, the excluded one, is suddenly included in the deepest conversation about God's heart. She does not have to climb Gerizim or travel to Jerusalem. The kingdom has come to her, right at her well. This moment is still alive today. How many of us think God is locked in a building, a ritual, a tradition? How many walls still divide us? Church against church, religion against religion, race against race. Jesus' declaration tears through all of it. Worship is not confined. It is not performance. It is honesty, spirit breathing truth into our broken places. It is you, in your room, whispering a prayer. It is you in your car, pouring out your heart. It is you in failure, still seen and loved. The well of worship is now everywhere. And here lies the personal breakthrough. The woman at the well realizes this is no ordinary prophet. With trembling hope, she says, "I know the Messiah is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything." And Jesus looks at her, this forgotten woman, and says the most stunning words, "I, the one speaking to you, I am he." Let that sink in. Of all people, he reveals his identity not to kings, not to priests, not to the religious elite, but to her, the outcast. The Messiah comes first to the margins. There is a lesson blazing here. Your value is not determined by society's whispers or your own mistakes. Your worth is sealed by the God who sits at your well and tells you the truth with grace. That day, shame lost its grip. That day, barriers fell. That day, living water began to flow into the dry places of a soul long forgotten. And this is the invitation for us. What are the barriers we believe disqualify us? Our past, our failures, our doubts? What arguments do we hide behind to keep from facing the truth? Jesus cuts through them all with a promise. Living water, spirit and truth. Freedom that no wall can contain. The story is not just hers, it is ours. And the transformation is only beginning. A new worship, spirit and truth. This is the moment everything shifts. The centuries-old debate between Jews and Samaritans about where to worship, Mount Gerizim or Jerusalem, suddenly collapses under the weight of Jesus' words. A time is coming, and has now come, when the true worshippers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. Imagine hearing that for the first time. For a Samaritan woman who had been told all her life that she was unworthy, that her worship was invalid, these words were freedom-breaking chains. No temple walls, no mountain altars, no rituals controlled by men in power, just raw, honest worship rising from a heart touched by God's Spirit. Think about what this means for us today. How many of us believe worship only counts inside a church building, under stained glass windows, or with perfect songs and sermons? Jesus blows that lie apart. Spirit and truth mean worship is not confined. It flows everywhere, in a prison cell, in a hospital bed, in a car on the way to work, in the silence of your room when tears won't stop falling. Worship in spirit is breath meeting breath. Worship in truth is honesty. No masks, no pretending, no polished prayers, just the real you before the real God. And that is where living water flows. This teaching was not an abstract idea. It was personal healing. Jesus was telling her, you don't need to climb a mountain to find God. He has come to meet you right here at your well. That revelation still shakes the world. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe true worship can happen anywhere, even outside traditional religion? That question still sparks debate today, and yet Jesus already answered it 2,000 years ago. And here's the beauty. She doesn't argue anymore. Instead, hope bursts from her heart. I know the Messiah is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything. And Jesus declares plainly, I, the one speaking to you, I am he. This is one of the clearest revelations of his identity in the entire Gospel of John, given not to kings or priests, but to her, the outcast. Her shame becomes the stage for divine truth. The transformation, from shamed to sent. The woman came to the well hiding, but she left running. The jar she carried, the symbol of her routine, her burden, her shame, was left behind. The detail is small but explosive. She no longer needed it. She had come for water, but she had found the source of living water himself. She dropped what tied her to her past because her future had just been rewritten. That moment of leaving the jar is a picture of release, the shedding of an old identity, the first breath of freedom, and then the miracle of courage. She ran back into the very village she had been avoiding. The same streets that had whispered against her now echoed with her voice. Come, see a man who told me everything I ever did. The line is raw, vulnerable, almost scandalous. She doesn't hide her past. She highlights it. Her brokenness becomes her testimony. And it works. The villagers, who once judged her, are stunned. Something in her eyes, her voice, her transformed spirit, compels them to go and see for themselves. This nameless outcast becomes the first evangelist in the Gospel of John, the spark that draws an entire community to Jesus. Here lies a profound lesson. What we hide in shame, God can use in power. The very story we fear will disqualify us, can become the evidence of grace that sets others free. Her testimony proves that vulnerability is more powerful than perfection. She did not preach a sermon. She did not perform a miracle. She simply told the truth of her encounter, and the truth was enough to shake a village. Think of your own life. How often do we silence ourselves because of our past? How often do we believe our mistakes disqualify us from speaking about faith, hope, or grace? The story of the woman at the well proves the opposite. The scars you carry can become the signposts that point others toward healing. The mistakes you regret can become the message that says, grace is real, because I've lived it. This is not just her transformation. It is the pattern for every believer. When Jesus meets us in our shame and replaces it with truth and love, he doesn't just heal us, he sends us. He turns the most unlikely people into his messengers. That day, a village in Samaria tasted living water because one broken woman dared to run back and tell her story. And through her, the gospel showed its power to break every wall, between races, genders, reputations, and even between the past and the future. The invitation is clear. What jar do you need to leave behind? What old identity, what shame, what empty pursuit is weighing you down? Maybe today is the day to drop it at the well and run free into your calling. The ripple effect. Revival in a village. One woman's story ignited an entire town. The outcast who once carried shame heavier than her water jar suddenly became the flame that drew her whole community to Jesus. She didn't stand on a stage. She didn't quote scripture like a trained rabbi. She simply said, "Come, see a man who told me everything I ever did." Those words, born from honesty, carried more weight than any polished sermon. People who once mocked her now followed her voice because transformation cannot be faked. They saw in her eyes the freedom of someone who had been truly set free. Imagine the scene. A village buzzing, people rushing from their homes, dust rising on the road as a crowd moves toward Jacob's well. For years, Samaria had been defined by division, resentment, and suspicion of outsiders. Now, curiosity and hope pulled them forward. And here's the miracle. Jesus, who had been sitting with one forgotten woman, was now surrounded by a village ready to believe. They urged him to stay, and he did, for 2 days. In that short time, living water flowed through an entire community. The Gospel of John tells us, many of the Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. And after meeting him themselves, they declared, "We no longer believe just because of what you said. Now we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this man really is the Savior of the world." This is the power of testimony. It begins with one voice daring to tell the truth, and it multiplies until lives are changed. Think of how this translates into our world. A single story of recovery, forgiveness, transformation can ripple through families, neighborhoods, even nations. That's why it matters to share what God has done for you. When you speak, you plant seeds of hope in places you may never see bloom. Drop a comment below. Do you believe one person's story can change an entire community, or do we underestimate the power of vulnerability? The lesson here is sharp and healing. Never underestimate your impact. If a woman buried under shame could become the first evangelist of Samaria, then no one is disqualified. The very story you think discredits you may be the key that unlocks someone else's prison. Her ripple effect is still moving through history, and you are invited to create ripples of your own. The wells we keep returning to, a mirror for us today. But this story is not just hers, it's ours. The image of the woman at the well is a mirror reflecting every soul that has ever chased satisfaction in dry places. We all have wells. For some, it's the well of career, believing one more promotion will finally fill the emptiness. For others, it's the well of approval, craving likes, comments, applause, hoping the noise will drown out the loneliness. Still others return to the well of relationships, possessions, or endless entertainment, only to find the thirst returns stronger than before. Jesus' words cut through time. Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. That is not condemnation. It's compassion, an invitation to stop exhausting ourselves at empty wells. Think about your own life. Where do you keep going back, hoping for satisfaction that never lasts? The living water Jesus offers is not a quick fix. It is a spring that rises within, a presence that satisfies not for a moment, but for eternity. This is not theory. It is reality, experienced by millions who have turned to him and found peace no success or pleasure could give. And the beauty is this: he doesn't wait for us to get our lives together before offering it. He meets us in our noonday shame, at the wells we'd rather visit alone, and says, "I see you, I know you, and I still choose you." The application is clear. True worship in spirit and truth transforms us into living wells ourselves, overflowing into the lives of others. Instead of drawing from emptiness, we become sources of encouragement, healing, and hope. Picture a world where believers live like wells, refreshing workplaces, families, friendships, and even strangers with the love of Christ. That is the blueprint Jesus left in Samaria. So here is the challenge. Identify your well. Be honest about the thing you keep chasing that never satisfies. Then ask him for living water. Write it in the comments if you're brave. Naming the well you're ready to leave behind can inspire someone else to face theirs. Because the truth is, the greatest revivals do not start in temples or mountains. They start when thirsty people admit their need and let the Spirit flow. The story of the Samaritan woman is not just ancient history. It is a call echoing right now, asking, will you keep digging in dry ground, or will you finally drink from the well that never runs dry? At the heart of John 4, at the silent heat of Jacob's well, a story unfolded that still has the power to reach into the deepest corners of our lives. The woman at the well came thirsty for water, but she discovered the Messiah, the source of living water that never runs dry. That encounter was not a small event tucked away in history. It was the declaration that no shame is too heavy, no wall too high, no past too dark for the grace of Jesus to shatter. She arrived carrying her jar of burdens, but she left carrying a testimony that transformed an entire village. And isn't that what we long for too? To leave behind the jars that weigh us down and step into a freedom that overflows. This story is not about religion as performance. It is about relationship as redemption. The Samaritan woman teaches us that God doesn't wait for the perfect. He doesn't wait for us to get it all together, to climb the right mountain or to speak the right words. He comes to us at noon, in the heat of our isolation, at the wells we return to in secret. He comes when we are most unworthy, when the whispers of others have branded us by our failures. And he does not turn away. He sits, he speaks, he sees. That is the miracle, that the Creator of heaven and earth chooses to meet us in the places we hide. Think about your own life for a moment. What is the well you keep coming back to? Is it the pursuit of success, believing one more achievement will quench the thirst? Is it the approval of people, hoping another like, another compliment, another nod of validation will silence the emptiness inside? Is it a relationship you cling to for identity, or the endless distraction of screens that keep you from facing yourself? The message of the Gospel of John is piercing. Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. And maybe you felt it, the cycle of thirst that never ends. But here is the invitation, as alive today as it was in Samaria. Whoever drinks the water I give will never thirst. Indeed, it will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life. That promise is not poetry. It is power. It is the kind of water that heals wounds buried for years, that restores dignity where shame has ruled, that brings belonging to the outcast. The Samaritan woman experienced it in a single conversation, and her life became proof that transformation is possible. Her vulnerability became her strength. She didn't hide her past, she shouted it. Come, see a man who told me everything I ever did. That honesty lit a fire that spread through her entire village, and maybe that's the lesson we most need today. What if the very thing we hide in fear is the testimony someone else needs to hear to believe that grace is real? This is where her story becomes our story. Because Jesus doesn't just want to meet us at the well, he wants to turn us into wells. Not stagnant pools that run dry, but springs of spirit and truth that refresh the lives around us. Imagine what would happen if each of us lived like that. Workplaces would shift from competition to compassion. Families scarred by silence would rediscover forgiveness. Communities divided by prejudice would taste reconciliation. That is the ripple effect of living water. It doesn't stop with you, it flows through you. And yet the choice remains. Will we keep returning to dry ground, digging deeper into the same empty wells? Or will we dare to drink from the source that never runs out? The woman at the well had to decide, and so do we. Her abandoned jar still speaks. It says, leave behind what no longer satisfies. Let go of the shame, the endless striving, the false promises. Step into the freedom that Jesus offers, the kind that fills you so fully you can't help but overflow. So here's the question I want to leave with you, and I would love to see your answers in the comments. What is the well you are ready to leave behind? Is it fear? Is it the hunger for approval? Is it the weight of regret? Your story matters. Your voice matters. And sharing it might be the spark that ignites hope in someone else's life, just as hers did in Samaria. If this story has stirred something in you, if it has touched your heart or helped you see your own journey in a new light, I invite you to like this video and subscribe so we can continue exploring these timeless stories together. If you feel this message gave you strength or clarity in the middle of a dark season, I welcome you to support this work with even the smallest gesture, because every act of encouragement, every bit of energy you give, is fuel that helps me keep creating videos that carry hope, healing, and truth. And please know this: your presence here, your engagement, is already a priceless gift. The woman at the well reminds us that no one is too far gone, no one too broken, no one too stained to be seen, known, and loved by God. That is the good news. Shame is not the end of the story. Living water still flows, and the invitation is wide open for every soul thirsty enough to ask. So step into the story, drink deeply, leave your jar behind, and watch as your life too becomes a testimony that transforms the world. Thank you for walking through this journey with me. Thank you for giving your time, your attention, your heart. It means more than words can express. May you find in this message not just knowledge but healing, not just information but transformation. And may your soul never thirst again.